the 12th of May 1945. A muddy trench in the Burmese jungle. 3 Gurkha riflemen crouched in darkness, listening to the sound of at least 200 Japanese soldiers creeping through the undergrowth toward their position. Rifleman Lachhiman Gurung, 27 years old, 4'11" tall, gripped his Lee Enfield rifle and waited. His post was the most forward position of the British defensive line. If it fell, 2 companies of Gurkhas would be slaughtered. At 1:20 a.m., the grenades began falling. Gurung watched the first arc through the darkness and land near his trench. He scooped it up and threw it back. The explosion briefly illuminated the jungle, revealing dozens of Japanese soldiers rushing forward. A second grenade fell inside the trench. Gurung grabbed it and hurled it back. It detonated mid-air. A third landed at his feet. He picked it up, and it exploded in his hand. The blast tore off the fingers of his right hand, destroyed his right eye, and burned his arm, chest, and legs. The other 2 Gurkhas in the trench were wounded, and 200 Japanese soldiers were charging at them. Any rational soldier would have surrendered or died. Lachhiman Gurung grabbed his rifle with his left hand and started firing. For the next 4 hours, he held the trench alone, firing, reloading, screaming at the Japanese to come and fight a Gurkha. When dawn broke and the Japanese finally retreated, 31 enemy bodies lay before his position. 31 soldiers killed by one man with one hand, a man who should have been dead within minutes. This is the story of the most incredible one-man stand in World War II. Born December 1917 inches, Dakhani, a small village in Nepal, Gurung grew up in poverty. Life in the mountains offered few opportunities. Farm like his father or join the British Indian Army as a Gurkha. Gurkhas had served Britain since 1815, feared for their discipline, courage, and deadly skill with the kukri knife. They carried a motto, "Better to die than be a coward." Young Gurung heard stories of Gurkha heroes and was inspired. At 23, he walked to the British recruitment station in December 1940. The war was expanding. Height requirements were relaxed. Though 4'11", Gurung was accepted into the 4th Battalion, 8th Gurkha Rifles. He trained rigorously, mastering the Lee Enfield rifle, jungle tactics, and the Gurkha code of never surrendering. By 1944, his battalion was deployed to Burma, a brutal theatre of war, dense jungle, monsoon rains, disease, and the fanatical Japanese army. The Allies had slowly pushed the Japanese back. Operation Extended Capital aimed to recapture central Burma. Gurung's battalion fought through swamps, rivers, and jungle hills, facing ambushes, snipers, and relentless defenders. By May 1945, the Japanese were retreating south. On May 9, Gurung's unit was ordered to block Japanese withdrawal near Tongda. The terrain was dense jungle with muddy trails. Gurkhas dug trenches, cleared fields of fire, and prepared defences. Gurung's section was the forward post 100, yards ahead of the main line. Their job, provide early warning, slow the Japanese, and survive. On the night of May 12, a full assault began. At least 200 Japanese soldiers attacked Gurung's trench with grenades, machine guns, and rifles. At 1:20 a.m., the grenades fell. Gurung hurled the first 2 back. The third exploded in his right hand, destroying it and his right eye, wounding his entire body. The other 2 Gurkhas were incapacitated. The Japanese screamed and charged. Gurung, bleeding and half-blind, grabbed his rifle left-handed and began firing. The Lee Enfield required 2 hands, but Gurung improvised. Bracing the rifle against his hip, he worked the bolt with his left hand, aimed with one eye, and started killing. Japanese soldiers expected an easy victory, but found a rifleman fighting with terrifying skill. For hours, he held the trench alone, firing, reloading, moving, and screaming challenges. Reinforcements could not reach him due to heavy enemy fire. By 3 a.m., the Japanese launched a coordinated push from multiple angles, throwing grenades and firing machine guns. Gurung, operating on pure instinct, aimed, fired, and reloaded, hitting targets in near darkness. Every few seconds, another Japanese soldier fell. Blood loss, pain, and shock pressed on him, but he stayed conscious, refusing to quit. His ammunition ran low, but he calculated every shot, ensuring the attackers could not close in. By 4 a.m., Japanese attacks faltered. Too many casualties, too much fear of the unseen defender. Gurung, wounded, one-handed, and half-blind, had stopped the enemy's advance. He rested briefly, checked his rifle and remaining cartridges, and waited for the next assault. The company reported the forward post still holding, unbelievable against such overwhelming odds. Dawn approached. The Japanese tried a final desperate assault, but faltered before reaching Gurung's trench. When Gurung's comrades finally reached him, they expected to find him dead. Instead, he sat in his trench, exhausted, wounded, bloodied, still conscious, rifle in lap, kukri knife on the parapet, ready to fight. Medical evacuation saved his life, but not his hand or eye. 31 Japanese soldiers lay dead around him. The C Company perimeter had held. The Victoria Cross was awarded, published in the London Gazette on the 9th of August 1945. The citation recognised his actions but could not capture the horror of 4 hours of continuous, one-handed, near-blind combat against overwhelming numbers. Gurung recovered in military hospitals and returned to Nepal, missing a hand and an eye but honoured as a living legend. Life was difficult, farming was hard, but he became an advocate for Gurkha welfare and a symbol of courage. Gurung died the 12th of December 2010, at 92. His death was mourned across Nepal and Britain. His legacy endures in Gurkha regiments, museums, and the story of a man who refused to die, who showed the world what courage truly means. Better to die than be a coward. Gurung's story did not end on the battlefield. Returning to Nepal, he carried the weight of his injuries and the honour of the Victoria Cross. Life in Dakhani remained challenging. Farming was difficult with one hand. Every day required adaptation. Yet, his fame spread quickly. Villagers, local schools, and later the wider nation celebrated the one-handed Gurkha who had killed 31 Japanese soldiers in 4 hours of combat. Children learned of his bravery alongside tales of previous Gurkha heroes. His actions became a living lesson in courage, duty, and resilience. In the years following the war, Gurung married and started a family. He struggled financially despite the small pension awarded to Victoria Cross recipients, but he remained committed to helping fellow veterans. Many Gurkhas returned home with injuries or trauma, and Gurung used his position to advocate for better care and recognition for these men. He reminded officials and the public that Gurkhas had served Britain faithfully for generations, often facing deadly odds without complaint. He became a respected voice on veteran welfare, attending ceremonies, sharing his experience, and ensuring that the sacrifices of his comrades were never forgotten. In 1995, 50 years after the battle at Tongda, Gurung travelled to London for Victoria Cross commemorations. He met other recipients, attended ceremonies at the Imperial War Museum, and was personally honoured by Queen Elizabeth II. Reporters and military historians sought his story, but Gurung remained humble. He consistently attributed his actions to duty and the Gurkha code: fight, never surrender, never quit. "I was a Gurkha," he would say simply. "I did what I had to do." Despite the passing decades, Gurung's wartime action remained a benchmark of courage. Military academies and historians studied the Tongda engagement to understand not only its tactical significance, but also the psychological strength it demonstrated. How one man, wounded, bloodied, and outnumbered, could hold a position that might have fallen within minutes, became an enduring lesson in determination, improvisation under pressure, and the power of belief in one's duty. Gurung's ability to operate a bolt-action rifle with one hand, aim with one eye, and continue firing under constant assault exemplified the extreme physical and mental fortitude taught in Gurkha training, but rarely tested so brutally. The trench where Gurung fought no longer exists. The Burmese jungle reclaimed the hillside, erasing all physical signs of that night. But the story endures, passed down through Gurkha regiments, commemorated in museums, and celebrated in Britain and Nepal. Visitors to the Gurkha Museum in Winchester, England, can read his Victoria Cross citation, see photographs, and understand the intensity of his 4-hour stand. Stories, lessons, and tactical studies ensure that new generations of Gurkhas understand the meaning of courage and duty. Gurung's actions also highlighted the human aspect of war. He was not a superhuman soldier. He was a man trained, prepared, and committed. His height, poverty, and lack of advantages did not hinder him. What mattered was his refusal to surrender, his determination to protect his comrades, and his adherence to the Gurkha ethos, better to die than be a coward. Against an enemy with tactical advantage, overwhelming numbers, and momentum, Gurung became a living embodiment of discipline, training, and sheer willpower. Even decades later, Gurung's story inspired soldiers and civilians alike. It challenged assumptions about human limits, courage, and perseverance. Modern military studies examine his actions to understand not just mechanics but mindset, how focus, duty, and refusal to quit can overcome extreme odds. Gurung himself remained modest about the attention, insisting that he had only done his duty as any Gurkha would. His life after the war reflected this humility. He lived quietly in Nepal, cared for his family, and worked to support fellow Gurkhas. When Lachhiman Gurung passed away on the 12th of December 2010, at 92, Nepal and Britain mourned. Military units held ceremonies, news outlets recounted his legendary stand, and historians reflected on the impact of his bravery. His Victoria Cross remains preserved as a symbol of courage, displayed for future generations to witness. The story of his 4-hour defense, one-handed and half-blind against overwhelming odds, remains an enduring testament to the power of duty, courage, and refusing to quit. Gurung's life and actions continue to teach the same lesson he embodied that night in May, 1945. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the commitment to act in spite of it. Duty is not following orders when convenient, but completing the task even when impossible. Honor is not winning, but refusing to lose. His trench in the Burmese jungle may be gone, the battlefield reclaimed by nature, but the legacy of one man, one Gurkha, and his defiance against impossible odds survives. Lachhiman Gurung's story remains a cornerstone of Gurkha identity. Every new recruit learns of his stand, understanding that valor is measured not by size or advantage, but by the willingness to hold fast when all else fails. His courage is memorialized in museums, recounted in schools, and remembered in the villages of Nepal. The 31 Japanese soldiers who fell to him, the 4 hours of hell, the one hand, the one eye. These are not just numbers or details, but symbols of what determination, training, and duty can achieve. Better to die than be a coward. On the 13th of May 1945, Lachhiman Gurung proved that it was more than a motto. It was reality. Against overwhelming odds, against physical destruction, against fear, one man held the line. One man refused to yield. One man reminded the world that courage, skill, and refusal to quit can defy even the most desperate circumstances. Gurung's story continues to inspire, teach, and remind humanity of the extraordinary potential in ordinary people who choose to stand when the world expects them to fall.